But here I'm rendering out a little movie, and this kind of shows a turnaround. And I'll fire this off to my art. He thinks it's looking cool at this point. And you can see I've got basically all the elements in there. I've got the little scissor tentacle things on the end there, and I have the tentacles moving. You know, they're not completely all shaped the same way, so it looks like the creature's alive a little bit. Trying to make it so it's not an absolutely static pose. And here I've made this whole front section one giant mesh. Another reason I love Max is because you can go in and make everything one giant mesh and throw a freeform deform on the whole thing and move it around. And this is at this point. Kevin Lanning is so incredibly good when he does these creature models, and same with Chris Wells, our other creature modeler. When he does these creature models, they really get into the anatomy of behind these guys, and they'll get all the veins and things like that. That, you know, as a guy that's interested a lot in the mechanics, I kind of leave it to them to go their own way on that stuff. And now is where I start really having fun with this thing. I'm adding in buckles and bolts and all that. There's something about adding buckles to this locust stuff that kind of makes it seem like it is a saddle or something that's strapped on, and I love that. And at this point, I'm really getting excited about the model. You know, straps and how this thing is bound to the creature. I've also got some little technical bits. You can see there the little, I guess, ports that I've stuck onto the body. It's like the Locust have gone in and kind of stapled, you know, mechanical control devices onto the actual skin of this guy. And it also kind of, it breaks up that huge organic surface with, you know, kind of dispersing the mechanical bits down the body. As I'm adding these buckles, I'll speak a little bit more about, you know, what I think makes a good concept guy or what works. I think one of the most important things I figured out early on is defining who your boss is. Define one person that is your boss, and he, she is the one that is going to give you your direction. And everyone else has to filter or siphon down through them. There's nothing worse than being a concept guy and having, you know, 5 or 6 people coming at you with different stuff or deadlines or anything like that. It just for me, it just gets confusing and ultimately extremely frustrating. So it goes back to that thing, is keeping your concept guy happy. Mountain Dew and one boss. That's all you need. Went in and started, the subconscious took over, and by the time I had finished this one, I thought it was one of the more successful shapes that I'd come up with on the creature, but ultimately I cannot remember how I came up with this or, you know, why. It's one of those things that just comes out of your head and you end up doing it because just because I've been doing it for so long, I guess. I went into the zone. I think another thing that works for me as far as, I'm talking about headspace and frustration level and stuff like that, and maybe I'm hitting on it too much, but something that works for me is I'll put in my time at work, 8 to 10 hour day or whatever the case may be, and I don't have a computer at home that I work on. In fact, all I have is a laptop for surfing the internet at home. When I leave the office, I shut off my brain. for the first few years I was in the industry, I would take my work home with me, and I would lay awake at night thinking about the designs, and I just stress myself out. I think it's, at least the way I work, it's really important for me to get away, and when I leave work, I'm thinking about other things completely, and it really frees me up as far as knowing that there's going to be an end. You know, because it can be mentally exhausting to be at work all day, having to come up with new and original stuff. It's a lot of pressure, and you know, if you're going to be doing this for years, it's important that you give your brain a break. Of course, when you're new and starting out, I recommend working 120 hours a week and never resting. And I'm kidding, but it's important to let your brain rest. And a lot of the time I'll find, you know, if I do get into like I have to go on some kind of crunch or something like that where I have to put in you know, an 80-hour week or whatever, what have you, which I haven't had to do in a long time, but my ideas will stagnate, and you know, I'll go to these default whatever's easiest just because I can't think anymore. Keeping your brain fresh is really important, and having other avenues or hobbies is a good exercise. So yeah, I'm getting into the little bits now. He's got the right shape and bulk, and there's a lot of weird surfaces and things in there that are picking up. You can probably tell I added a little specular to the materials that I had applied to this guy, and that kind of picks out the highlights and things like that. So that's where all these little bevels come in, and that's why I bevel everything, is because it's just one more little surface detail that the light kind of hits off of and adds interest. It kind of goes back to this. I used to work with this guy Paul Richards, and he's a fantastic artist, and he does he's one of those guys that can draw sci-fi stuff in 2D, and it's just awesome. You know, I never had that ability, but one of his rules was whenever he did sci-fi stuff, instead of using, you know, if he was drawing the outline to a shape, instead of using one line, use two, and that makes it sci-fi. And then extreme sci-fi is use 3 lines. So that kind of got me using the bevel as well. You know, it's a outside outline of the shape, but then you throw a bevel on it and it's 2 lines, so automatically it's science fiction. So yeah, he's really feeling like you could kind of pick him up and play with him at this point. Goes back again. If he starts looking like something I want as an action figure sitting on my desk at work, then I know I'm on the right track. Maybe that's part of the success of Gears of War, is so many of us, well, you know, everyone in the game industry is into the action figures and stuff like that, but from the beginning, so many of us were action figure buffs, and we're so into toys, and I hate to say that because I'm an adult, but at a base level, we kind of approached a lot of these designs like we really wanted them to be action figures someday. And now they are, which is really incredible. You can see there I've thrown some pistons in and things like that. I've got some little packs on the back of his turret there. It's these little human elements, or, well, yeah, they are human elements. They're things that are recognizable to you as a human being that brings this whole monstrous creature back to reality just a little bit. And ultimately, I think makes it more interesting. The only problem with this is of course you got to make the whole thing one giant mesh if you want to save time in painting all these little rivets on, and that can kind of get kind of hairy, but it's so fun to paint all these little bolts on here. And this is my favorite point. The nuts and bolts. I just love this part of the process. You can see those little arms on the back. I've kind of got them skewed off a little bit at the break point that I made before, so that it's not just a straight wing sticking off the back. It's one more little point of interest. Obviously, bolts automatically. When I put these bolts on there, you can in your brain you automatically associate these things with being heavy, kind of metal plates. So I don't mind using a ton of them. And I'm pretty happy at this point that this thing is fits in with the Locust idea of just absolute brutality. And when you look at this model, it's this almost chaotic, you know, it looks like almost a thorn bush of parts kind of thrown together. I guess one more point I could hit on, I was talking before, what makes good, again, what makes a good concept artist. And I think something that's really unusual in our industry is actually working on a project or with a team for an extended period of time. And at Epic, we've been working together. I've been working with the same guys for a number of years, and that does nothing but good things as far as the process and how smooth everything works together, and knowing what other people need in the concepts. And it just has made me an absolutely more effective concept guy because I've been working with these guys long enough to know what they need and what they expect to see. So yeah, just going in and detailing out here. I'm getting ready for the final renders and the final kind of well, it's not an architecture. I approach it like a blueprint when I do my final rendering of this thing, and I'll show you that later. But I've always been interested in blueprints and, as I mentioned before, architectural drawings and things like that. So when I do render this guy out, I kind of go back to that idea of doing turnarounds and capturing different angles and things like that in my final concept. Yeah, I wouldn't want to meet this guy in a dark alley. And here I'm just rendering out a few things from different angles. And here's using that camera angle again with the 90-degree FOV.